Greetings, Quester, and welcome to Tiny Meeples' Big Talk with Matt and Richard.
And welcome to this episode of Tiny Meeples' Big Talk.
Can you tell what we're going to talk about?
Yep, you guessed it, Star Wars.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're normally cross-genre, aren't you?
Richard did once point out, we talked about Star Wars on our last Tiny Meeples' Big Talk, didn't we?
Yeah.
And Richard did once point out that we have to keep a real balance between the two, and if we didn't, the punishments were horrific.
They are.
So here we are this week to talk to you about Star Trek. Now, this was an idea that Richard had, which was, who would you pick to make the all-star bridge crew?
Yeah, like, who would you pick to be your crew, basically? If you were going to pick a crew to run a starship, a Star Trek starship, it doesn't matter which one. I mean, you can also pick which ship, I suppose. But obviously each character fulfills different roles, and in each series you got different characters doing the same kind of jobs. So if you could choose from between all of them, which ones would it be? Now,
we did think briefly about this. Astrometrics. There's only real, because you said there was no astrometrics officer with some of the other ships.
Well, I kind of thought 7 was the only one out of like main ones. And you pointed out there was one in Enterprise. You say?
I kind of was right and wrong in that, because I thought about it, because I said to you, I'm fairly sure there was one. What they had on the Next Generation was a stellar cartography department, and there was a head of stellar cartography. A Lieutenant Darren. She only appeared in one episode, and she was a love interest for Picard. But that was stellar cartography, not astrometrics. But later on, they repurposed the stellar cartography lab and converted it into an astrometrics lab. But they never really mentioned I think it was season 7 of Star Trek Next Generation, but they never really had a specific astrometrics officer. So what we decided was that everybody gets to have a 7 of 9 on their crew.
Yeah, because I kind of just thought she invented it as a department.
Yeah.
Because she and Harry built that astrometrics lab, and they basically modelled the whole galaxy there, didn't they? And I thought that was an amazing idea.
Yeah.
And
I think she was the first person to officially have, particularly as a recurring role, that role of astrometrics officer.
Yeah,
but
we're thinking
it wasn't
of it
the first
as a
one
program.
Yeah.
Like, if you were basically the main roles that are in the TV program, what you can have, and for that, I mean, you also get like Keiko being a botanist, but you don't need to have a botanist in every ship. No. Things like that can be basically in the science department. I wouldn't mind if everybody got a Keiko for the ship, because every ship, botany would be a part of it, but it wouldn't be a bridge officer role, would it? No.
And what we've been mainly thinking of is like the main department head roles.
Get a plant up here, quick!
Yeah.
But certain departments would have certain roles in it, but we're kind of thinking of department heads, basically, aren't we?
So we've all said that as a freebie, we'll start off with astrometrics, and everyone gets a 7 of 9.
So okay, 7.
7 of 9. So thinking about this, Richard, had you decided who was going to be your ship's chief engineer?
The chief engineer, I thought of that. Well, just personally, I would like to have B'Elanna, just because she. I just like that character that she has. Like, they're all competent, like in every single show, and like Scotty would always be kind of telling you that he can't do things, then he can do things.
Well, he is a miracle worker.
Yeah, but then he did kind of let the game away when he said that's what he does. And LaForge does a similar thing. I really like
LaForge is cool, and he's incredibly efficient. He's an excellent engineer.
Yeah,
but he's quite straight cut, isn't he? In a way. But he is a very cool character.
O'Brien has a lot of personal demons, and I like him, but I kind of like him being on DS9 and like playing around in the holodeck, doing the Alamo and stuff like that. It seemed like he's happier there than on a starship. I have to admit,
for my engineer, I was kind of torn. I mean, I thought of Geordie and dismissed Geordie for the reasons I said, because he's a very straight cut character and he's he's a really good character. But I thought that some of the others just had more interesting things. I mean, you mentioned you discarded O'Brien because of some of his personal demons. Well, that was one of the reasons why I was sort of thinking O'Brien.
Yeah,
he wasn't my actual choice.
That.
Yeah, but that was it, because I like crew that have got some variation. I mean, I was really tempted with Scotty, because Scotty is just I grew up admiring Scotty.
Engineer.
But I went for B'Elanna as well.
Did you?
I went
that's
for BLT.
Okay, so you've got BLT, yeah. And I like the way she always calls Harry Starfleet, even though she's back in Starfleet as well now.
Well, she's incredibly feisty. She's got so much spirit. I mean, she reminds me in that way of Kira Nerys. They've both had similar backgrounds. I mean, she's half human, half Klingon, so she has different cultural things to deal with.
I mean, she was doing the same fight as Kira, wasn't she? Basically, when she was
against the Cardassians.
Yeah.
And but she is an amazing engineer, and I don't think sometimes people give her credit, because I mean, just think how difficult it was to keep that starship running in the Delta Quadrant.
I was thinking a lot about the times when Janeway was really impressed with B'Elanna's engineering skills and stuff and knowledge. It's like, even though she couldn't live by the Academy's rules and did better under the Marquis, she was a brilliant engineer, and you just have to cope with a bit of her punching people in the face, stuff like that. But the rest of the time, a great engineer.
So we've actually, I didn't think we'd both go for B'Elanna, but we have both gone for B'Elanna. So pick an officer.
Which officer?
Any officer.
Oh, okay. Who have you got for science officer?
Science. Now, again, this was one where I was really torn, but only between two characters here. Actually, no, I say that. My first thought was a bit of a, shall I go with Spock or shall I go with Data?
Yeah.
But Data sort of fulfilled the science officer's role, but he was technically not the science officer. He was technically he kind of filled that capacity, but he was the operations officer.
Operations officer, yeah.
But in the end, I made the choice with Jadzia Dax.
Oh, right, yeah, that's a nice one. Yeah.
Dax, again, one of my favourite characters in there. She used to be at times described as a bit of an action Barbie. But she was an incredibly intelligent... Not by me, no. She was an incredibly intelligent character. Having the Dax symbiont gave her quite a lot of dimensions.
And she loved life. Same as Dr. McCoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nice some characters I like that.
And she could draw on so much life experience that I thought I had to have her on my crew in some capacity.
Yeah.
And I was kind of torn, because I initially wrote her down for the helm or flight controller position.
Right.
But in the end, I went for science officer.
Okay, so she was your science officer.
So,
for me, I've gone with Spock.
You went with Spock.
Yeah, just because... for one thing, it's just the classic, and it's such a great character, and also just the sheer... Well, they've all got the knowledge, basically, but I mean, Spock's got so much knowledge, and it's like, it would be nice to have at least one character being logical above all else.
That might be a problem with my crew.
It kind of offsets the B'Elanna characters. You've got B'Elanna very emotional, but she still knows her stuff, but then Spock is going to be bringing the logic even at the expense of everything else. Like, you've seen when Spock was in charge, like in the Galileo 7, things like that, and how it doesn't go very well. But when it's with other characters, and when he's not directly in command, then he's a really great character to have. And I just thought it'd be great to be on a ship that has Spock.
I was so torn, because I really wanted Spock on the crew, but I just, as I say,
making a party planner.
Yeah, Dax had even more years of experience because of the symbiote. And
some of the lives she was just dossing, so
some of them. Some of them. And I even thought of Data in that role.
I mean, I was capacities.
I think he could outperform Spock, but there was just kind of like a childhood in my head of watching the original series and wanting Spock on the crew.
Yeah.
And I didn't find a place for him in the end.
The ship I'm imagining being on is Voyager, partly because I'm wearing this, which you told me was an actual prop from Voyager. This is why it doesn't fit me great, but it fits me okay. But I think that's really
That's
cool.
why you couldn't turn down wearing it for the episode.
Definitely not. I was at first a little bit against it, but yeah, this is great. Yeah, and also I just like the Voyager ship, being a little science ship. That was kind of scrappy thing. I mean, I know before when I talked about what ship I'd like to live on, I chose Enterprise D, but I'm thinking a bit more about Command here, and I really like Voyager, but I'm thinking if I've got Spock as the science officer, then I'd have to have on the bridge, have to cram on one of those Spockoscopes, as they call them in Futurama,
just so he could like steer in.
Look down that blue thing all the time, even if it does nothing. But yeah.
Okay, so for science, I've got Jadzia and you've got Spock. So
Yeah.
pick a role, Richard.
I'll pick another role. Have you got tactical down as one?
I have got tactical down.
Okay, who have you got for tactical?
Worf.
Worf. Yeah, that is a great tactical officer, actually.
Well, it was kind of because originally I was thinking of Worf for security, which is his role in Next Generation. But then in Deep Space Nine, he's more in a tactical role where he's coordinating fleet movements and the ships around Deep Space Nine.
Well, they all do
and he's
several
still,
roles.
he's still involved in security and is always there when there's a melee going on.
Yeah.
And Worf is actually Michael Dorn has appeared in more episodes of Star Trek than any other actor.
I know. I've watched them all, and he is often in Star Trek.
And he's just a beast, isn't he? He's just absolutely amazing in as Worf.
It's such an interesting character. I mean, it's such a strong character, but also there's little funny idiosyncrasies that come out.
What would you say is one of the your strongest memories of Worf as a character? As in the things that he did?
What I'm thinking of at the moment is things that are in DS9, particularly when he fought loads of Jemadar. When they were in the prison camp.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. And the other one was when
Martok's supporting him and he's fighting and he goes through one after the other right up until the first.
And they keep sticking Garrick in the wall even
and
he's
like
got claustrophobia.
Refusing to back down even though he's got broken ribs.
Yeah. He keeps going and pressing that thing. So that's kind of the quintessential.
And the Jemadar says,
thing.
I cannot defeat this man.
I can only kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. And then he talks about it later, doesn't he? How he had that kind of warrior moment with Martok, and you can kind of think back to the episode. The other one I think of him mainly of is that one when he went back to save Jadzia when they were running through the forest.
The Klingon hearts beating.
Yeah, that one, and because that really screwed his career up, didn't it? Because that's basically why he didn't get to have a ship of his own. He would obviously have had one by now.
Always made me smile as well. So actually, we see him in command in one of the Star Trek films, don't we? First Contact.
When he's flying the Defiant.
He's in command of the Defiant, yeah.
Like I said, it's such a little ship.
No, but because there's one of the things in Deep Space Nine was when Jadzia tells Cisco that he intimidates Worf.
Oh, but he's really happy, isn't he?
He's happy and he's laughing. I intimidate Worf.
Yeah, that was
the only person that can intimidate Worf. But yeah, so I mean, that guy. If there's anybody you want at your side in a melee, it's gonna be Worf, isn't it? I mean, he's probably the greatest warrior that we see in Star Trek.
Well, if it's going to be purely tactical, then it's got to be Worf, really. So I'm gonna put that down.
We're both going for Worf. Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of keeping track of yours on here. So.
You're comparing. I'm also, because he's in tactical, got a security role, and I've gone for Odo.
Yeah, he loves the policing.
Yeah.
So.
Because he's a shapeshifter, he is so effective as a policeman, and you've got to have somebody on my ship that can be watching Quark. Yeah,
you do. Even if he's not on your ship,
I need to know
he
that
will
somebody
still be
is making
Quark.
arrangements to be still watching Quark. So
having the Ferengi under surveillance is the main aspect.
Because there's things that he does as a security officer because of being a shapeshifter, where he's able to sneak aboard ships and solve crimes, and
it's
it's
not just
absolutely
that.
incredible.
Even if he wasn't, even when he's a solid, because he is a solid for a little while, he is still a great police officer.
Yeah,
isn't he?
because he's just got a great policeman's instinct,
'cause he
and he's
lives it.
suspicious of everybody.
Yeah.
It's one of his best qualities. But as well as that, he'd be such a useful person to have on the crew because he could go into environments where they don't need oxygen, where gravity's an issue. He can change into all sorts of different creatures and useful things. So definitely, I want Odo on the crew as security.
I don't know if I was thinking about the security, Rob, because normally it kind of goes with tactical, doesn't it? Because Worf was both tactical and security on the Enterprise, but then on DS9 he was tactical and intelligence, wasn't he? Because I remember when Dr. Bashir had to take over for him and he wasn't read all the reports and keep them to himself, and he hated it. So, but I think in the original series, I don't think there was there a security officer?
There were security. There were
security
people
guys, but they died every week. So who the heck
maybe
knew
that's
who they were?
yeah, but this is it. That's because there was no one running the department.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, maybe they had just an empty desk with dust on it, and Kirk was just having to write letters to families all the time. But yeah, so I think it was a little bit more utopian back then, because it was like back when Gene Roddenberry was calling the shots a bit more, and yeah, I think really in DS9 that was when security kind of became an issue because they were making the show a bit darker, weren't they, and everything. But obviously in I just wanted to be a bit different. I mean, Odo is wonderful for security, but I'm gonna have Yar on mine.
Yar, Tasha Yar.
Yeah,
really?
Because I'd like to add a universe where she was alive again. It was sad when she died. So
I'm here for you, man. I'm here for you.
Thanks, man. I know she was like back as Sealer for a while, but it was just sad to have a character die so early.
You know, I remember when I first started collecting Star Trek CCG cards when I was a kid, and I got a Tasha Yar card, and I was so excited I got a Tasha Yar card, and then I was like, but she dies so early on.
Yeah, and as they said in it, it was like meaningless as well. It was a display of power by that stupid Tar guy, but yeah, it's just like that. Her backstory was that she was on this really kind of dystopian planet, and she'd kind of come from that kind of thing. So I just thought.
So it's her background that you like.
Yeah, the fact that she's kind of bringing those kind of things to security.
Okay.
And partly because I don't want my ship to be exactly the same as yours.
Yeah.
So we have a different science officer and different security ones, but we've got the same tactical and engineer. So
okay,
we'll just see how it goes from.
We've both gone for
this point
Klingons in those departments.
Yeah, but I really do like Odo for security. That's great, but a bit the same as O'Brien. I like him being on DS9. I don't like to think of him being on a ship so much, but that's just my personal thing, and it's my crew, so I'll do what I want.
Yeah. Who have you got on medical?
Medical, I have gone for the DS9 route and chosen the guy who's genetically engineered, Bashir.
Julian Bashir.
Yeah.
Why have you gone for Bashir?
Partly because of the fact that he is genetically engineered, but partly I do like the character because he was a little bit similar to Harry Kim, just very, very optimistic and happy to be there, and just wanted to experience the galaxy and stuff like that. And it's nice to have a character like that. And when you can have him also be hyper intelligent at the same time, it just seems like that would be a real benefit. It was a toss up between him and Phlox from Enterprise because I liked his menagerie of creatures that he had, because I think it was a really good idea in Enterprise to have him go the more kind of biological, like using creatures for their medicinal properties route, which is what we do here on Earth, like basically searching the rainforest for cures for diseases. And it's just interesting for that to happen in the future, but for multiple planets, rather than just use gadgets like the others do. So who have you chosen?
Well, I thought a little bit about the EMH from Voyager, because the EMH is a good choice. But
I've still got him in a pinch.
Yeah. I thought the EMH would be a good choice, but if power ran out, it would be difficult, and it took a long time to get to a good EMH. He wasn't good from the beginning.
Yeah, you need the 29th century thing that he had on.
And you might not get that. The other thing I was thinking was, because I liked Crusher when she came back after her disappearance from the Next Generation, and she was trying different things. She was a much better character, better written, and better acted, I'd say, as well. But that was because Gates McFadden was doing she had more input into that character at that point.
Yeah.
Which is why she came back, and she did a great service when she did that. But in the end, I went for Julian Bashir because he is a great Doctor. He's brilliantly clever, great to have in a pinch. He's actually, when you find out he's genetic engineered, and he starts to not hide his abilities in different things, which he'd done previously, you start to realise just how useful he is. I mean, he's like a little computer, like Data sometimes, working out figures incredibly fast. Increased hand-eye coordination, which is good if you come into a fight. And he's just generally a good guy.
So you've got a bit of a ship full of computers, haven't you, really?
I've got some very clever people on my ship, and I would like to think of as being an intelligent crew. But he's my medical choice. Who have you got for Helm?
Helmsman.
Did you pick a helmsman?
I did, yeah.
Are you worried that I might have picked the same helmsman?
Tom Paris.
One of my favourite characters in Voyager, and actually beyond that, I just think Tom Paris is a very good character.
Well, you need the rebel without a cause to be on that. Well, he's just all about piloting, but also he has loads of other interests, and I think he would make the crew a bit more fun. He was constantly kind of answering back to Janeway and all stuff like that, wasn't he? So I think that would be interesting.
We get to play as Captain Proton holo programs, and
I mean, just look at the people I've got. Like, he'd be on there with Spock and Worf. You'd need somebody bringing a bit of character to the bridge. So, and he also.
Are you suggesting that Worf doesn't have character?
Oh, he has to order prune juice all the time. I mean,
take a walk on the wild side. I mean, yeah, Tom Paris, I think, is a bit of an underrated character sometimes because he was very well acted, very well played, but he had some very good survival skills because he grew up in a bit of a rough. He is very much ready in a bar. He knows his way around.
Yeah, and also
he's got street smarts, and also B'Elanna's in engineering. So if I've got Tom, he can be happy.
Actually, yeah. You know what? I didn't think of that.
You're not thinking about these characters' love lives, are you? I mean, I've got Jadzia and Worf together. I've got B'Elanna and Tom together.
I've got a lonely Worf.
You've got a lonely
is going to be pining for Jadzia as well.
So yeah,
no.
So we've both gone with Tom Paris.
We always found him quite a funny character as well. I watched all these with my sister, and we just found it funny that Tom Paris was such a rebel, but also he was just such a clean-cut guy as well. It's like he was spoken about as being such a rebel, but he was also just such a nice, normal guy. And so it's like he's basically the Starfleet version of a rebel, which is still just a stand-up member of the community.
I mean, he's not like Harry Kim in the sense of being really naive. He's got a lot of street smarts, but he is genuinely a nice guy who wants to help people.
There's still a bad
but he just
influence
makes
on Harry.
a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
but
yeah, one of the best ones of Voyager, I think, is where he gets demoted. I think it was very interesting to have an episode where a character gets severely disciplined like that. So yeah, he was a very interesting character. Yeah, I thought so, and plus I just thought, as a pilot, have someone who loves the piloting, because I know on the Next Generation they went through a few, didn't they? Really, helmsmen. They didn't have the same one for a long time.
No, but obviously with being out in the Delta Quadrant, they just had a particularly one guy pretty much running the show.
You're saying they had to just have what they had.
Well, there were other helmsmen, but he was the standout one. And actually,
Janeway went to the prison to get him.
He was the third officer as well, wasn't he? He was never actually specifically said, but if you actually look at some of the dialogue, so the
just
command
felt
structure
that between the lines.
No, it was. There were times where like it was made clear that he was in command because Tuvok, Chakotay, and Janeway weren't there. And so he was in charge, which would put him in the role of third officer.
I just remember that episode of...
There's several instances where it was like that. Plus there was another one where it was kind of like I think it was like an alternate reality or something like that. But it was Chakotay, Tuvok and and then Paris in command.
Mm.
But yeah, he was the. You can read between the lines there with some
Until
of the things that were said.
EMH turned himself into the ECH.
Yeah, emergency command hologram.
Yeah.
But then, so Tom was just a great character. But now we've gone through a lot of these. I've only got 3 roles left. Operations.
Forgot about operations.
You forgot about operations.
Let me just think about what the options are.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I'll tell you who I chose.
Okay.
Data. Now,
Hang on. Okay, I see. He can do both roles, can't he?
he is.
I thought of 2 datas then.
Well, no, I've only got 1 data.
Oh, who
I've
was
already got
your?
one role.
Oh, your science was Jazzy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Dax was
Yeah.
the science officer. So the only role I've got for Data is ops. And I think having Data on the ship in any capacity is a good idea.
Yeah. it is.
Because he's just an all-round great person to have on the ship.
Mm.
Incredibly intelligent, incredibly useful as a crew member, and one of my favourites in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Brent
that is
Spiner
great.
did a great job of bringing Data to life.
Yeah, I think that is a good choice. I mean, I know I have said before that I would. Actually, I can kind of have my cake and eat it with the engineers, because I'm pretty sure wasn't who was the operations in DS9?
It was one Miles Edward O'Brien.
I'm gonna have him.
And I was torn between Miles and Data, but I just thought Data's so much
O'Brien.
useful in other aspects.
Well, your ship's going to be very logical, and mine is going to be nice and Irish, which is how I want my ship.
Nice and Irish. You've only got O'Brien. He's
Well,
the only Irishman.
Yeah, but he's so Irish.
He's so okay.
Yeah.
Miles Edward O'Brien. Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll give you that one.
Okay. And he can hang out with Bashir. And they can
Yeah.
go on the holodeck there.
Yeah, well, I think Bashir was always going to be friends with my Data.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Because, well, they both think alike.
Yeah.
Because with his genetic engineering,
Yeah.
you know.
It's somebody that could possibly beat him at darts, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. So, there's only 2 roles left. I know
Yeah.
who my captain and first officer are. I'd
Right.
like to hear who your first officer is.
My first officer. The obvious choice is Riker, but I didn't want to go with the obvious choice for mine. I was kind of tempted about T'Pol.
Mhm.
She was basically the first officer, but also the science officer of Enterprise. But I thought, if I'd got Spock to be the Vulcan, I don't want to be speciesist, but like he's filling.
One Vulcan's enough.
Well, he's filling the logical kind of role there. I don't want to be like that captain on that episode of DS9 who only has Vulcans. I think so. Yeah, that's a bit nasty. So I actually wanted to have Kira because of her scrappiness and
I nearly went with
Yeah.
Kira.
and just her very strong ways, and just like Yar, it's her past basically. Like she can bring those kind of experiences to the crew, and basically the Federation seems kind of pampered, but these people aren't. And I think basically not just in combat situations, but also just in hanging around on the ship. I think the stuff they say will just be a splash of cold water to the people who've always lived like within the Federation. So yeah, Kira is mine.
So you got Kira. I very nearly went for Kira.
Mm-hmm.
I did go for the only rational choice,
Yeah, William T. Riker.
William T. Riker.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of Riker.
I mean your ship is going to be flipping amazing, but mine is going to be kind of. It's just going to be the ones that I want to have, and that's kind of what I really went for. So yours is Riker.
Mine was Riker. I mean, Riker is a brilliant first officer.
He's very cool.
He is the number one. He is possibly the coolest guy in Star Trek,
Yeah.
isn't he? And there was so many times where I thought, why has this guy not got a ship of his own? Because he would make an amazing captain.
He kept not wanting to have
Because he
one,
wanted to
didn't
be
he?
on the Enterprise with
the
Picard.
flagship. Yeah, being the second officer on the flagship was better than having his own other ship, wasn't it, to him?
I always thought, there's so many options for a new Star Trek series, and again, they've gone into the past, which I wish they hadn't have done with the upcoming Star Trek show. But I always wanted to see a series where Riker got his own ship.
Right.
I mean, there was a series of books, weren't there? The Star Trek following the Titan, the USS Titan, where he gets his own crew, and he has Tuvok on his crew,
That's a really
security,
interesting crew.
and he has is by that point is married to Deanna, so Deanna's
She's
with
there,
him.
yeah.
And then the rest
They
of
have
the
a few
crew is
crazy
pretty-
aliens that are really good.
It's
There's
like a
that,
dinosaur doctor.
the dinosaur doctor,
Dr. Dino, I
that's
always
like
want to
kind of
call him.
half cyborg. And they also had their science officer could only exist in like nearly 0 G, and they had like a hologram avatar for her to get around the rest of the ship. I thought it was like interesting ideas that would be difficult to realise on the TV screen, but you could do it in a book. So I think the Titan is a really interesting ship.
I mean, I do think out of all the first officers, if you were going to say a first officer that would make the best captain, I mean, all of the Star Trek ships had good first officers. I mean, you've gone with Kira. Kira would be a brilliant leader.
Yeah.
Chakotay was great. I loved the character of Chakotay.
I very nearly went for Chakotay because I did really like him.
Well, I always wanted him to be the captain instead of Janeway. I always preferred him as a character to Janeway's character.
I like the vegetarian characters as well. Just because it's what I eat, so
But
it's nice to have that validated.
but again, because of his ancestry and his heritage, he brought something different to the show. But in the end, yeah, there's just no competition. Riker, hands down, is the best number one.
Yeah.
So, big reveal time.
No, actually, before we do the captain, I also wanted to have a communications officer because there's only certain times when they have one.
I did think about that, but because of the invent of the universal translators, they didn't have one after Uhura. So there's only two in Star Trek, which was Hoshi and Uhura herself.
I just wanted to have Hoshi on the ship because she's so competent.
If I was going to have
so amazing with languages.
If I was going to pick a communications officer, so we're saying everyone gets a communications officer, I would have gone with Hoshi.
Yeah. I mean,
although now you've said Hoshi, I'm thinking maybe I should have Uhura.
You could have Kelvin Uhura if you wanted. I mean,
Kelvin Universe Uhura.
I don't know.
Zoe Saldana.
What? Oh yeah, I don't know. No, actually, you've not got Spock. I've got Prime Universe Spock here, and I was just thinking out loud. I don't know. I mean, Prime Universe.
I think you're giving away a little bit too much about yourself here.
No, sorry.
So we all get a communications officer. In that case, I would probably say, I do like Hoshi. I do like the character. I do like Uhura as well, but I feel that they probably the wrong time. They fleshed out Hoshi's character more and went more into her background and her story and developed her more than they did with Uhura.
She was just so brilliant with languages. I mean, she was like Daniel Jackson level of knowing languages, but also she could listen to it for a while and then isolate what the verbs were and stuff like that, and it was just so amazing.
I mean, I do think, as I say, I'd probably have to say Hoshi, because as much as I love Uhura, I do, as I say, I feel that they just spent more time creating the character with Hoshi. And with the original series Star Trek, it was although all the characters were good. I mean, Chekhov and Sulu were great characters. Scotty was amazing. But a lot of the time, the only characters they gave a lot of depth to and with backstory and subplots were your main three, Kirk, Spock and McCoy. Whereas with the later series, they made sure to give more time. Probably just a time factor, because the original series had far fewer episodes than the other series of Star Trek. So I would probably say that, again, they just did more with the Hoshi character, so I'd have to go with Hoshi. Now, before we come to the captains, I do think that we should all get one free pick for a crew member.
Or just a random one?
Not to go in a specific role, but in like maybe a special advisory status.
That's a nice idea.
And for me, I am going with Kira.
Right, so you still get a Kira.
I get a Kira. Because Kira Nerys is one of the best characters in Star Trek. I absolutely love her character. I think Nana Visitor does a great portrayal of the character. And it's the first time we really see a character from that sort of background, from an oppressed, conquered world. That was a freedom fighter. In a pinch, she's a character you want to have at your side.
Okay.
If I was being held captive by the Cardassians, then it would be her and Worf that I'd want coming after me to rescue me.
I don't blame you. Yeah, they are a reliable team.
And someone's got to kick Cardassian butt on my ship.
Well, I already have Kira and Worf on my ship. And since it's going to be a free character, I would just
non-captainsy.
I will just go with my heart and choose another Vulcan. I'm going to go with Tuvok.
Tuvok, good choice.
I love what he did with the whole Vulcan philosophy, basically. I mean, there was so much more to his idea of being Vulcan, and he's another tactical officer, and he is he knows multiple martial arts and things like that, and his mental discipline seems a little bit different to Spock's. I mean, I've already got Spock as being my science officer, but Tuvok, it seems like he has all these emotions that he's keeping in check. I know Spock does as well, but Spock finds things fascinating, famously. Whereas Tuvok, basically, it makes Vulcan philosophy seem like more of a way of life. And I'm just watching Voyager. I really identified with his character, because the way he'd find people annoying, like Neelix, obviously, and yet he would keep everything in control all the time. And I would love to have him on the ship. So I'm just writing Tuvok down here.
Yep.
No particular role, but he will be on the ship. And yours was Kira.
Mine was Kira.
So Kira is here
as
as
I
well.
say, Kira's got so much spirit. She's such a great character. She's got so much empathy with her for other people and their problems. And I just think I would want a Kira Nerys on my ship. She nearly made it to my first officer role as well, because she is just an exceptional person.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
I wish I could have had Spock on my ship. If I'd got Kira on a roll, I would probably have said that my free officer was going to be Spock, because I regret not having Spock on my ship. But my ship as it is just so cool.
I regret not having Chakotay, but I couldn't really think of him being in a different role, and I think, I don't know, if I'm just having he would have been my second choice for first officer, whereas Tuvok, I would just like him to have him on the ship somewhere.
So the big moments of truth, the captaincy.
Yeah, the captaincy. Now, this is why we kept this till last, but yeah, I kind of imagined me being the captain on this ship.
Power struggles.
I know, power play. But no, if we're going to pick a captain for this particular crew,
I imagined it was just being a ship that we're on. You know, like in Star Trek, you get admirals that would go out on missions, and they'd have a complete command crew on the.
So yours ship. Is an even greater power play. So you want to be an admiral? Yeah.
Well, I just like the idea of being on the ship with this crew, and this is knowing that this crew was out there. If sometimes you think, you need a rescue mission. You're stranded somewhere. Who would come to save you? Well, this is the crew I'd want to come and save me.
Right.
But yeah, captain. Aside from yourself, who would you pick as the captain?
Well, for me, I know there are other captains out there, but it's kind of the classic toss-up between Picard and Kirk, because I loved The Next Generation when I was watching that, and obviously Captain Picard is so solid with tactics, and also he's so cultured as well, and so good at diplomacy. But I really love the original series as well, and it's more recently that I've been watching the original series and appreciating that Kirk has as much depth, basically, and yet is more of a maverick. He will flaunt the rules more. And I'm just thinking, with this particular crew that I've got here, I think for the captain, I just think it'd be really interesting to have Kirk on a ship. He's got Spock, basically, so there's the classic team of Kirk and Spock. But then to have his first officer being Kira, his helmsman being Tom Paris, his tactical being Worf, Bashir, B'Elanna, O'Brien, Yarhosh, and Tuvok.
Kira is such a maverick herself that
I admit,
you've got a very maverick team there.
This ship will be causing chaos in the galaxy, but I would like to see it.
Yeah.
So I'm going with that. I'm going with Kirk for my captain.
I also thought of the traditional, toss-up, as you say, between Kirk and Picard. But for a long time, I felt that if I was going to serve with a captain, I'd want it to be Sisko.
Right.
from Deep Space Nine.
Because you're wearing his uniform.
I am wearing his... Well, he lent it me. On the specific terms that I named him as the captain of the ship.
Oh, okay, good.
So,
So we're eating jambalaya later.
Yeah.
With a Raktajino.
I mean, out of all... I mean, I love the original... I love all from original series. The only series I wasn't a huge fan of was Enterprise. But I loved Deep Space Nine. I thought that as a series, it did stories that were long-term and ongoing in a way that the other series couldn't, because they were constantly moving location, whereas they were able to have a long-term villain. I mean, having the story with the nemesis of Cisco and Dukat was a brilliant move.
There was a lot of twists around it as well, weren't there?
And as I say, having Kira there as kind of like a maverick character. Well, Cisco could be a maverick. I almost see Cisco as sitting between Kirk and Picard.
He did use his biological weapons that time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think because I was debating really between Picard and Cisco, but what clinched it for me was one scene in particular. You hit me! Picard never hit me!
Oh, yeah.
I'm not Picard!
When he punched Q.
When he punched Q in the face.
Actually, yeah, punching Q is pretty badass.
I mean, take aside defeating the Dominion. Take aside the fact that he's the only captain that's not entirely human because he's part Prophet.
Yeah.
The fact that he punched a Q.
Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty amazing.
But
he
liked his sports. He was a great team builder. He could cook. He would have you around to dinner.
He was a single dad.
That's it. I felt that there was a lot to his character. I mean, it was the first time you saw a character with a real family situation, because obviously he had his own dad he was worried about. He had his son. Yeah. He ended up getting married. He came from a situation where he was a single dad after losing his wife. There was so much more that they did with that character. It was the only character that they had that was more than just a Starfleet captain, because he was the emissary of the prophets.
Yeah.
So he had
much a
cultural
interesting aspect to his character, I thought.
He was a great officer for wartime, but he was also a good diplomat, much like Picard. He also had a real interest in history and archaeology, like Picard, but that was more to do with the fact that because of his role as the emissary and trying to understand the history of Bajor.
His interest was archaeology on Bajor, wasn't it?
Whereas Picard's was just archaeology across the galaxy.
Yeah, especially with Vash.
Well, Vash is an interest all in her own, isn't she? And obviously his friendship with Dax was great. So
you've got Cisco.
And I just thought, again, if I was going to have this is a guy who, whereas Picard would follow the Prime Directive and probably leave you stranded if he had
98% of the time.
Kirk would just disregard the Prime Directive every time he needed to. Cisco would do that when it was important. He was a guy that knew... He saw the line, and he knew when it was morally right to cross the line.
Yes.
So he followed the rules, but he wasn't a slave to the rules. He knew sometimes that for things to be done right, you had to kind of bend the rules a little bit.
Look at that stuff he did with Garrick that time. The Pale Moonlight one, was it?
Yeah, in the Pale Moonlight, which was a fantastic episode.
Brilliant.
When he brought the Romulans into the war.
Yeah.
And he can live with it.
And it was a fake. Yeah. Okay.
How ironic.
Alright, so you have got Cisco as captain, Riker as first officer, Jadzia as science officer, Tom Paris on the helm, Worf at tactical, Bashir as the doctor, B'Elanna in the engine room, 7 of 9 in the astrometrics lab, Data as operations officer, Odo as security officer, Hoshi on communications, and Kira
wandering around and kicking ass,
doing whatever she needs,
kicking
to
ass
do.
And taking names.
Yeah, that is a pretty amazing crew. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that as being. What ship are you imagining, just off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I was probably thinking the Enterprise E, just because it was an advanced ship.
That is a sweet ship. Yeah. So yeah, they've got a lot of firepower with them.
I mean, obviously, being Cisco, I nearly said the Defiant.
Yeah, but that would be very cramped and warlike and stuff. So yeah.
For just general exploration, we want the Enterprise.
I don't think you'd have an astrometrics lab on that.
No, there wouldn't be space.
So yeah, and for me, I've got Captain Kirk with the First Officer Kira. That is weird. just even
Kirk
thinking
and
about
Kira.
that. Yeah. And Science Officer Spock, looking down the Spockoscope. Tom Paris is still flying the ship, and Worf is still on tactical. Bashir is still being the genetically engineered doctor. B'Elanna is in the engine room. Seven's in the astrometrics lab. This is all on Voyager, by the way. O'Brien is sorting out operations and hanging out with Bashir at various times. Security is Tasha Yar, being incredibly tough. Communications is Hoshi, and Tuvok is there to help everybody with their logic.
And I would say that, I mean, O'Brien is an amazing character. I love that O'Brien was in Next Generation and Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
I love some of the stories that he gets into and his friendship with Bashir.
Getting close to Worf in amount of episodes.
Well, as I say, there's not
many episodes of Next Generation.
He did probably more small appearances than a lot. Because originally it was the transporter chief. Wasn't
you counting seconds of screen time?
Just sheer appearances.
Right. Okay.
He appeared a lot, just operating transporters. But he then later played more of a role in some of the later Next Generation episodes.
And he was such a deep character in DS9. And because I watched some of the commentaries of the episodes and interviews with the writers and things, and they said when you want to really feel an episode, you just make something really awful happen to O'Brien. I felt sorry for him, but
this is it.
Really terrible things happened to him.
He had a lot to live through, especially because of his in different ordeals with the Cardassians and things like that. But he was such a good character. I mean, there's when you're looking at these sort of series and you're seeing that a character has to hold an entire episode by himself. There's not a lot of characters that can do that and do it well.
No.
But with him, you can just watch any episode with him and his acting will bring it to life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Cole Meany was great at that.
He was absolutely fantastic, wasn't he? And your dad got to meet him once.
He did, yeah, at the university. Yeah. I think he was doing something different at the time. But
I got to meet Tuvok.
Did you?
Yeah. When I was a kid, he did a signing at Forbidden Planet in Nottingham, and my dad took me.
That's why you suddenly became so wise.
So I got to meet him. I've got a signed picture of him somewhere.
Oh, sweet.
I say somewhere. I know exactly where it is. I'm just not admitting to it.
Okay. Oh yeah. You were wondering how much of your Star Trek memorabilia to bring out for this, and we decided half or something. I don't know. We don't want to look too bad.
We just brought my 7 of 9 and my Star Trek props out. I didn't want to look like too much of a geek.
It's really cool the way she's just in an alcove there. That'd be such a cool way to sleep as well, being in an alcove.
So we've picked our ships. We've gone for different crews. I very carefully had to make sure that my crew wasn't just the crew of Deep Space Nine, because that is my favourite Star Trek series.
I tried to have a bit of a
One of the reasons
mix.
I went for Riker over Kira for First Officer and for B'Elanna, over O'Brien, was because I thought if I don't do this, it is going to turn into DS9 with Data and 7.
DS9 is a very easy series to love. I mean, you can just get so into the characters and the situations.
I have to admit, if someone said to me, I've never watched any Star Trek, what should I watch to see if I like it or not? Deep Space Nine would be what I tell them to watch.
I think because partly I think it's got so many issues that are relevant, and I think if somebody hadn't watched any Star Trek, then they're probably not that into sci-fi. But DS9 is a bit more real than the others, and that's partly why they made it, isn't it? Because it wasn't the rest of Star Trek wasn't quite dark enough. I mean, it seemed too utopian future. And, even when they introduced the Borg as being the downside of technology,
but even the Borg weren't the villains that the Cardassians were.
No.
I mean, the Cardassians, and particularly Dukat, and then later the Dominion.
Yeah, it was like the dark side of humanity, basically, was coming out in the Cardassians. Then in later episodes, you had to see them as being more three-dimensional as well, because you had the stuff that Garrick had to go through, and saw
Garrick
him as a
was
person.
one of the brilliant. I mean, I'd say I would
if
love to have
spy
had
on this. Then
if I had an intelligence officer, then we would have both had a free Garrick.
He would have done, really, yeah. And
because Garrick was one of the most interesting characters because he had such a mysterious presence to him.
Another person that Cisco punched as well.
Yep, he did.
I love the way he just...
Moonlight.
Yeah, Garrick blocked it and then he punched him with the other hand.
I just love the fact the way that Garrick just didn't... He just knew Cisco was angry. He knew Cisco had a right to be angry, so he was just talking him down while taking the hits.
While taking the beating. But basically, Garrick took a beating for the sake of the winning
humanity.
The war. Yeah, for the Alpha Quadrant, really.
Yeah, and we don't give Garrick enough credit for that, so well done, Garrick. Andrew Robinson brilliantly portrayed that role.
And he wrote a really good book about it as well.
Yeah.
About A Stitch in Time. It's a great
I've read
book
that.
about Garrick.
He's started to find out more about his mysterious backstory. And
yeah.
So this is our Star Trek Dream Team.
Dedicated to Garrick.
Dedicated to Andrew Robinson as Garrick. Thank you, Garrick, for bringing the Romulans into the war and saving the Alpha Quadrant and life as we know it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thick skin.
Farewell, Quester. To find out about other productions by the Meddlesome Meeples, then check out our channel or rendezvous with us at meddlesomemeeples.com. Until next time, Quester, farewell and keep thine axe sharp.